example is when I had a new boss. This was the last couple years at State Farm where I did not feel he cared about me at all.
Mhm.
I felt like his job was to churn around the issues that we were having in the department, but frankly, I did not feel like I was part of his inner circle or, part of his team. So I think I had a hard time connecting and to care about what he wanted because frankly, I didn't get any of that. It was kind of like do your job and not to even bother to get to know me as a person. So that was hard because that told me a lot about the environment we were in at that moment, right? Even though I had all these great bosses and much of our career, this particular individual, frankly, was just not what I was used to. Let's just keep it that way. And so I think it caused me to really think about how the behaviors of leaders, like how is that affecting me, my health, my mental wellness? I did not feel at my best, frankly. They were going through a reorganization and we had a choice. You can stay and do this job that we're giving you, which by the way was one level below what I was doing for 9.5 years. There was no interview, there was no processes, but at the end of the day, that's the organization's decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect that, but does that mean I have to accept that? So I had to evaluate with a lot of tears and with friends and just people who I trusted to say, can I do something else? And so ultimately I did push the button to say, I will take the package and I'm going to go do something else, which was a shock to many because I was the loyal soldier, very, very Asian, female stereotype that I fit into in many ways. And worker bee, great job getting things, the doer, you know. And so I think I just finally said, I think I'm kind of done. Wow. And so that was a very, very big pivoting point because I didn't know what I was going to do next, which was very, I was like scared out of my mind. But I said, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to figure it out. I have some time. I'll figure things out and something will come. 2 days after I hit the button, I got a call from Leslie Moe Kaiser, and I'm going to ring that name out because she is my board member and a retiree at State Farm. And she said, what are you doing right now? I said, I have no idea. None. And she's just like, hey, we just lost our executive director 2 days ago, which, by the way, was the same time I hit the button. And they're like, come on over and figure it out while you're working here as the interim executive director. And I had been a fellow at 2001, 2002. And this was 2018. And I have not looked back ever since. And, it's funny. One of my peers told me, one of the executives said, oh, my God, Sue Ann's leaving. What is she going to do? And I'm sitting there like, did you forget that I'm working for the #1 insurance company in the United States at the time, plus Canada? And it was like, no. Trust me, I will make this happen. We'll figure out something. And so then I said, okay, now I've got gumption. Now we're going to go out and figure out what the heck we're going to do. And we're going to rock the world. So I think that's when I said I had to have a mental shift in my own mind about what I'm worth, what I'm doing, be more purpose driven. Not that I didn't have purpose before, but this is even deeper, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It makes sense. Now, you talked a little bit about people you trust, and you often hear the word board of directors or the phrase. Do you surround yourself with a board of directors, mentors, promoters, and how would you recommend for someone to build that network?
So I do. And it's not always the obvious either. So I have board of directors. I don't call it that, but trusted advisors or friends, who are my peers, who understand the work and the world. I also have people that I feel I admire a lot that, really provided some guidance when I first started the nonprofit because I didn't know anything about nonprofit, like
That's
zero.
a theme for you, Sue.
That's what I'm saying. I've had 5 different careers I know nothing about, and then I have to learn on the job, and I'm good at that part.
Yeah.
And understanding that I have to tap into people who know what they're talking about, and then they gave me advice, and then I figure it out from there. And sometimes and people are generous about that when you ask for advice and you're trying to kind of pick their brain and, say, hey, I really need some help here. Can you help me? People are generous.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you have to invest time to build
Mhm.
those relationships. You cannot just go there whenever you need something, right? You have to invest. And I think that's one of the things, because I'm a relator. I love relationships. I appreciate one-on-one especially. So
Mhm.
I literally could go to a party and sit with one person and probably talk to them all night and I'm just happy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that I appreciate is the depth of those relationships. As somebody who is always seeking funding for Kapa, I don't go away just because I don't get funding from somebody. If I like the person, I stick with them because I just like them.
Yes. So I can relate. I love the one-on-one interaction more because that's when you really get a little bit deeper and get to know the person more
Right.
than kind of more of a crowd type of thing. The other thing that I think you've done really well, and I've appreciated this because you and I met at the height of things that were just at the worst for our country. From an API perspective, Black Lives Matter, all of that turmoil that was happening and bubbling up. And you really carved out a space for API women and women of color to come together in a safe space with the compassion circle. And I think that's the first time when I've been in a room where I felt like, oh, you can be vulnerable and say what you need and share just for the sake of sharing and to be heard. So I think you've done really amazing work and you're living the example of, I think, what you have talked about, which is giving back and just really elevating other people. So thank you for that as well.
I appreciate you taking a chance and coming and joining our community. And by the way, everybody, I did not come to nonprofit to make more money. I just want to be clear. This is not about money. This is beyond money. This is about purpose. I just want to make sure and the other thing is, I would love to, maybe this will have to be a class. I would love to teach nonprofit folks. It's like, it is also about money, even though you want to go, oh no, I think it needs to go to the community. Yes, it needs to go to the community. Yes, it needs to, be for others in need, but it is also about making sure you are thinking about your own worth. And so I need to, I think, teach sometimes nonprofit
I think
folks
you do.
about money.
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah.
Now, let's end with this question. How do we continue to elevate one another and support one another and reach out across community to really build that foundation? You're doing a lot of that today. What advice will you give somebody who's starting out to figure that out for themselves?
So one of the things that, I talk about is the fact that you do not have to wait for somebody to say,
Mm,
hey, can you help me? It's obvious they need some help. So offer somebody the help, the network, or whatever it is that you can provide, offer it. Start there. Number one. Number two is I love partnerships.
mm,
So I've partnered with OCA. I've partnered with all kinds of organizations. The Women's Entrepreneurial Opportunity Project, which is primarily more African American entrepreneurship out in Atlanta. Amazing leaders there. So like my thing is, why don't you find ways that you can help one person, an organization, or a community pick something and do it? I don't think it has to be difficult. Is my thing. If it's not difficult, people will do it.
yeah,
So I always say if you look around, there's always somebody in need. So
absolutely.
what can you do to provide that support? Just even a small gesture.
There are lots of opportunities to try to offer that hand, offer the voice when someone isn't speaking. One of the things that I often have mentioned is being someone in tech and being a lot of times the only female and Asian female in the room. I think I'm much more aware if somebody else may be a little bit more shy or isn't maybe as comfortable talking, as comfortable maybe speaking up, using their voice. I take those moments just to say, hey, would you like to say something or add something to this conversation? Or what are your thoughts? And sometimes just asking that question is enough to allow them to be seen and to be heard if they choose to
I
speak.
love what you said, and here's a specific example of that. So SurveyMonkey did a poll several years ago where they surveyed, I think, over 4,000 employees. And what are some of the barriers of
Mm.
microaggression? And of course, not a surprise, being spoken over is one of the top three. And guess what? That applies more to women being spoken over in boardrooms or in meeting rooms or whatnot. So think about, if you're the only person in the room, Sandra, think about the fact that if you get spoken over, who's speaking up for you,
Yes.
right? Or the other piece is, oh, you're so well spoken. Okay, which is more towards the African Americans.
Mm.
And so that's a good example of where, like, oh, does that mean that they don't normally have, skills to be well spoken? What does that mean? So I
Mhm.
think we just have to be cognizant of how do we help create spaces for those voices. If you can support another person to be able to do that, that's big right there.
Yes, it is. Sue-Ann, I appreciate this conversation. I started off wanting to just ask you about your leadership journey, how you define that. We touched on so many areas that are very important, and you and I could probably go on tangents and talk about lots of different things, which are, very important, and we should continue talking. So thank you for the dialogue, and thank you for bringing me into your community. It's meant a lot to me, especially at a time, I think, when I needed it. So I appreciate you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Yeah. Take care. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.